Hello everybody and welcome back to another video. Today we're jumping back into World Cup content because we finally got the groups for the group stage announced. So we now know all four groups, the four teams in each of them, and what we can kind of guess to expect from these groups. And so today I'm just going to kind of go through the four groups, give you kind of my initial thoughts on the groups, which teams I think are most likely to move on, as well as kind of highlight anything of note that has happened with the teams in those groups since we last saw them in the qualifiers. I'm not going to dive into all of the rosters. I did make a bunch of videos over the summer talking about all of the teams when that was kind of getting ready to go on. So I'll link to that playlist in the description if you want to check it out, as well as at the end of this video if you're curious. Like I said, some of these teams have had some changes, so I'll talk about that whenever it is relevant, but I'm not going to talk about each team individually like I have in the past. Just going to talk about the groups as a whole and my thoughts on them. So let's jump in and talk about Group A, the first of four groups. This group features Team South Korea, Team Colombia, Team Mexico, and Team Finland. Off the bat, of course, Team South Korea, the global favorites, I think, among the entire tournament. This team has won 3 of the 4 World Cups, winning in 2016, 2017, 2018. So they're definitely the favorites to get out of this group on top. They mostly don't drop them out. This team is incredibly stacked with Overwatch League talent all over the place, coaching, players everywhere. Very, very good roster. Really, this group is going to be about the competition for the second seed and the second team to advance out of this group. None of these teams have had any changes since the qualifiers happened. So I think pretty confidently I feel like I can make an educated guess on how this one will go. I think Finland is definitely the team that looks to be the best bet to get out of this group alongside South Korea. On paper, they have a lot of Overwatch League veterans and talent on this team. Players like Sauna and Masa. So I think they probably get out of this group. The one I'm most excited to see is Colombia, because they shocked me a bit in the qualifiers, winning their group. EQO looked really, really good. And South America is a hard region to read because we just don't see a lot of it anymore in the Overwatch scene. They don't have a ton of representation in tournaments and stuff like that. So I'm interested to see what happens with Colombia, with EQO leading this team. I'm very curious if they can maybe surprise us and knock off a team like Finland. I think Mexico's probably the weakest team in this group. They don't have the star power that the other teams in this group have. They got third in America A. I think that they just feel like the weakest team on paper, but I don't think, I wouldn't be shocked if they beat Colombia. I wouldn't be shocked if they finished third. I just don't look at them as the top performing team, especially because I don't even, if I'm going to be honest with you, Colombia beating Brazil, to me, was a very impressive win. I think Brazil is in a better position right now than Mexico is. And so I think Mexico just feels like one of the weaker teams in the group stage. And I think they're probably, like I said, the weakest team in this group. But I don't know for sure. But I do know for sure that South Korea will win this group. And I think Finland will probably go out of it with them. But only time will tell. Next is Group B. This group is headlined by Team Great Britain, and they are joined by Team Australia, Team Brazil, and Team Canada. Now, this to me is the most competitive group. I think this is the group that realistically any team could win. I think Brazil is probably the weakest of the four, and I think is the least likely to win. But I think it is definitely possible for any team to get out of this group. And like I said, even Brazil, I think, could win it, depending on what we see out of them, right? I think Great Britain is probably the strongest team in this group. I think they have the best coach with Christopher. I think they have the most depth to their roster, just the highest end talent Kai, Funny Astro, Backbone, all Overwatch League players. You also have just a phenomenal player in Jikaru in Contenders who's been very, very good. So I think they're probably the best team. Australia, the big change for them since the qualifiers is that Punk stepped down and was replaced by a player by the name of Merritt, who is a support player. Obviously not the Florida Mayhem Merritt, different guy for this team. I think that hurts Australia quite a bit, and it's one of the reasons why I don't think Brazil should be like a shoe-in for the bottom team in this group, or why I don't think it's possible for anything else to happen. You know, I think it's very, 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 very much possible that losing Punk brings Australia's level of play down. Kuffa, who is the only tank player left on the team, is not a bad player by any means, but I wouldn't pick him over Punk if the option were there. I think Canada is a very interesting team. I think they're probably the team that gets out of this group alongside Great Britain, because you have players like Seeker and Cal and Crimzo who have been playing in the Overwatch League recently. False obviously played in the Overwatch League in the past. But to me, Seeker is so good, and almost every time we see Seeker play, I'm impressed. And I think Crimzo has had a very good year as well this year. So, yeah, I feel like this is probably one of the better teams in this group. I could see them winning it over Great Britain. I could see Great Britain winning it. I think it's probably one of those two. I think the fact that they're so close together is part of what makes this group competitive. I don't think this is going to be a group where you have a lot of 2-0 wins or 3-0 wins. I don't know if they're playing 3 maps or 2 maps. I'm going to assume it's probably 2 maps because it's usually what it is in the group stage. So it was in the qualifiers. So that's why, like, I could see a 2-1 game between Great Britain and Canada, 2-1 game between Canada and Australia, and who knows how it goes. So, like I said, I think this is probably the group of death, the most competitive group. All in all, I think this is the one I'm most interested to see how it goes, because it definitely could go either way. It feels very similar to the way that the EMEC A group felt in the qualifiers, in that Great Britain won that group, but they lost a game because it's just so close together. So I think this is probably the group that most likely that the top team that gets out of it loses a game. Not a guarantee. I think it's more likely that there's an undefeated team here than there was back in the qualifiers, just because there were so many games in the qualifiers. But I think that Great Britain and Canada should be the two that get out of this one. Up next is Group C. Very interesting group. It's headlined by Team China, the only team we have not yet seen play in the World Cup, and they're joined by Spain, Hong Kong, and Thailand. I did not talk about Team China when I did break down my rosters back over the summer, but that is because Team China didn't play. Like I said, they were automatically invited to the group of 16 because of the situation with Blizzard Games in China, so this team we haven't actually seen play in the World Cup. However, this team is mostly comprised of the players from the Hangzhou Spark, the only exception being that Farway 1987 is on this team, who was most recently on the Guangzhou Charge. They have had some changes. They made a coaching change, swapping head coaches, same way the Hangzhou Spark did. So Rui is not the head coach on this team any longer. Instead, it is now Yao Xie, who also coached the Hangzhou Spark when they got third in the playoffs. Also, 20 left the team. Similarly, of course, he also left the Hangzhou Spark. Who will replace 20? I'm not 100% positive. Pineapple is the guy who replaced him on the Spark, but he plays flex support now, and they already have a third or a second flex support in this team with Farway, so that seems unlikely. I hope Ligue is the guy they bring in, because he plays off-tank, which is what 20 also played. And I think Ligue is the player who wanted to be on the World Cup team. 20 just ended up on it kind of because of peer pressure, is the report. So that's what I'd like to see them add. I don't know who they'll add or if they'll add anybody, but that's the move I'd like to see them make as a whole. But this team should be really good. They should win this group with ease. I honestly don't like any of the other teams in this group. Spain is a mess right now. They've had a lot of stuff going on. They were already kind of a dark horse team. A lot of people did not expect them to get into the group stage. They were arguably the most shocking team of any team in the group stage, and they lost 2 of their damaged players. I think, from what I recall, the 2 best damaged players on this team, they had to replace them. I just don't see this team finding a lot of success. It was already kind of a shock. Like I said, they're here in the first place, so I think unlikely they do much. Hong Kong, another team, never really impressed me. I think APAC A was possibly the worst group in all of the qualifiers, save for South Korea, who were phenomenal. But, I mean, South Korea was... if I remember correctly, there was literally a map where it was against the Philippines, I believe. They spawn camped the Philippines so hard that they had to push less than a meter on Circuit Royale to win the map. And they walked out of the door and won the map. It was one of the worst plays I have ever seen. That group was abysmal. Japan was okay, but outside of South Korea and Japan, the group was not very good. So I don't really feel great about Hong Kong or Spain in this group. I think Thailand is most likely the second best team in this group. I think they've shown the most. I thought their group was more competitive than APAC A was. They had to go up against the likes of Australia, who they played very well against. They had to play New Zealand and India, who I was very impressed with. So, yeah, I think Thailand should be the second best team in this group. I just really don't have a lot of faith in Hong Kong or Spain at this point. It just feels very much like a group that is ripe for Thailand to get that second place in, and I think China is just going to pound everybody in this group after what they did in the what they did in the Overwatch playoffs. Yeah, I don't think anyone in this group is going to even come close to taking a map of Team China. I think this is easily the worst group in this World Cup. Team China is just going to farm everybody here. I think it's not even going to be a competition, really. Final group is Group D, and it is headlined by Team USA, and they are joined by Saudi Arabia, France, and Japan. Team USA, of course, the defending World Cup champions, winning in 2019. They should still be, I think, the best team in this group. Dante, the only new piece to this team since the qualifiers, though it's funny because he joined the roster right after the qualifiers, so he's been with the team basically since the qualifiers ended. A lot of these players have played together. Hydron, Kalush, Ultraviolet. It's a lot of really talented players. RuPaul just won the grand final, so this team should be very, very good. They should be the best team in this group. I think they should win it with ease. It depends really on what we see from Saudi Arabia and France, who I think have potential to be the second best team. Those two teams have both also had quite a lot of change happening to their rosters, which is part of also why I think Team USA should be favored. They haven't really been dealing with anything. Everything that happened to Team USA happened back in July and June. Since then, this team has had basically smooth sailing. They haven't really had much drama. They've been pretty consistent. I know they're boot camping right now in Florida, so that's why I feel like Team USA is pretty likely to get out of this one. France and Saudi Arabia have had to make changes to their rosters. France lost their coach. They had to, promote another coach. Saudi Arabia, Farah one-trick team in a lot of ways, kind of their best look. They just lost their Farah player. They probably have to bring in another one. So it's a little wild in this group. A lot of stuff going on. Japan's there as well. They've been okay this year. Team Varel in contenders. They've not really looked great on the global stage, but like I said, in their World Cup qualifiers, and they dominated everybody not named South Korea. Their group was just a cakewalk for them, so I think they are a bit of a hard team to really get a read on, just because, like I said, their group is not very good. But with the turmoil that's been going on with France and Saudi Arabia, lots of noise around those teams, that can really hurt a team. That can, if a team is unable to kind of block out that noise, that could definitely have negative impacts on the team. It could hurt performance. Maybe that's enough for Japan to get in. I don't really think it is, but maybe. We'll see what happens. So I think this one's pretty open between France and Saudi Arabia. Pick your poison. I want to see who Saudi Arabia brings in as their final player before I'm really sold on it. But France has talent. They have Overwatch League veterans. They have names. It'll be interesting to see. But I think Team USA right now is looking pretty good. The tournament's in the U.S. Pretty easy traveling for them, most likely. Yeah, it feels like a pretty good one for Team USA. I think when I looked at this originally and I first saw this group, I felt pretty heavily like this looked like a pretty dangerous, like could go anyway. But just as everything continues to come out, it just feels like Team USA really shouldn't be tested much in this group. We'll see. But I think they're definitely the team to beat in this group. And France and Saudi Arabia behind them. It'll be interesting to see, like I said, how they come together now after everything that's happened there. We'll just kind of see what happens. So there you go. Those are my initial reactions to these groups. I want to do another video when we get closer to the World Cup just to kind of do some final predictions. Maybe a bracket once we get the group stages concluded and we know what the bracket's going to be. Maybe I'll do a little bracket prediction once we've gotten that. Some more World Cup content as we get into the World Cup and get closer to the end of this year's Overwatch esports events. But that's really it for today. Let me know your thoughts on these groups in the comments down below. What group do you think is going to be the toughest group? Easiest group? Which teams do you think are going to get out of the groups? Whatever. You have to comment. Let me know in the comments down below. And if you want more content like this in the future because you enjoyed this video, consider liking and subscribing. Your support does help out a lot with the channel. That's going to be all, though, for me for today. Thank you all once again. I hope you're all staying safe and staying healthy. And until next time, bye-bye.